Well, my name is Randall Webster. I want to welcome you all to our lecture series. This is an ongoing program that allows us to learn more about our artists in action, our artists in residence, and our artists that are part of our exhibitions. Most of our programs for the last year are available on our website under the virtual A&H banner. So if there's any of our programming that you haven't seen over the last year, it's all still there and available. Probably a dozen different interviews with artists from all different walks of life. So it's really great content. A couple of upcoming events that you may be interested in. On August 27th, we will have a transportation trivia night and opening our history exhibition called Trains, Planes, and Automobiles Moving Maitland. That'll be in the Maitland History Museum. And I hope you've had an opportunity to visit our current art exhibition called On Seeing Segovia, and that's why we were having our Spanish music. It's our summer in Spain, so we've really been enjoying that. If you haven't gotten a chance to see it, I hope you will come by and see it. It's open through the middle of September. And then on October 8th, we will be opening our next exhibition, which is called Victor Bocas, A Bold and Colorful Journey. And Victor is a Central Florida artist and does a lot, very prolific, has shown all over the area. And he'll have over 100 works in his upcoming exhibition. And he will be giving a talk about his work and give a tour of the exhibition on November 3rd. So you'll want to put that on your calendars. Tonight, though, we are joined by our current artist in residence, LaTasha N. Nevada Diggs. LaTasha is an interdisciplinary artist with pieces ranging from culturally inspired beadwork to one-woman performances. She is a published author, poet, vocalist, and performance sound artist. The mediums LaTasha chooses focus on creating pieces that best communicate the narrative that she wants to tell. So please help me welcome LaTasha N. Nevada Diggs.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I know.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
I got it. Is the age of COVID. Do all types of things to keep ourselves safe.
I can't see.
I'm with you. So, hi, good evening. I'd like to thank the Art and History Museums of Maitland for the opportunity to be down here in residence. I'd like to thank Danielle and Randall and Dan and Diana and Iram and Jesse and Madeline and Danny and Cindy and Katie and everyone else whose names I'm not remembering immediately. I'd like to thank my fellow artists in action residents. We don't see each other much, but I guess that's a good thing because we're in our heads, we're in our zones. I'd like to thank the lizards. They welcome me every morning, every afternoon. I'd like to thank the frogs that I don't see, but I always hear plop into the pond. And I'd like to thank the big snake who was really my welcoming party right at the door of my studio, as well as the little one. The time has been really special. I don't know what it's going to turn into project-based wise. I know what it's informing me of, and informing me how to tell stories differently and push myself and just study And the time outside of New York City, just to walk this very flat landscape with this open sky and 2 lakes, and do my little exodus to the market every Sundays has been really much needed. A side note, I want to thank 2 individuals who are not here, named LaTasha and Wally. Both of them are 2 massage therapists that I was recently referred to by Danny and Wanda Raimundi Ortiz-Klotz, Artists in Action residents, because I was working and I locked up my neck and my shoulders, and so I was in pain. But meeting them, interesting enough, I thought about the fact that both of them are healers. Despite not knowing each other, my interaction with them came up when I was walking from the laundromat today, and they are healers. They're healers that ended up in Florida from other places, from elsewhere. They're healers that came to Florida escaping one thing or another for a better life, a safer life, a new life, oddly enough, becoming massage therapists, both of them. And I haven't even told either of them, you know, like, y'all have these very interesting, similar stories, even though they're very different stories, but, you know, having to do with escape, but then escape becoming a healer. So how that's going to tie into this talk is as good as you might guess. I don't know, but it's something I want to make visible and make plain and acknowledge regarding my time here. So I'm going to show this film, which explains my process in a kind of sort of way. So we'll watch the film and then we'll get into a conversation about the work, the previous work that I've been doing with my hands and what I'm doing now. Is that okay with y'all? Okay. So very quickly, the project that I had proposed back a long time ago in 2018, 2019, was a question of ancestry, which is an ongoing project I began in 2011 that combines beadwork, African and Native American influenced and formed, with text to explore personal and sacred markers of the often questioned self. In 2016, I traveled to Sao Salvador de Bahia, and there researched the symbolism and significance of beadwork in the Candomblé religion, cowrie shells, buzios, beads, misandas, assembled into various contas and guias. In the Lucumi Santeria tradition, they're often referred to as eleques and other forms of attire, regalia, and adornment as related to candomblé. This is the beginning of the project, and these are actually very small medallions measuring 4 by 4, where I started beating these questions that were often asked of me, right? Where are you from? Who's your daddy? Who's your mom? You sure? You know, literally, you're sure, or who's your people? And I'm just showing a couple of these. And this particular set of medallions eventually spell out, if it will click, who your mama, right? And still deciding on exactly how to install these, display them, activate them, perform them. What I came down here, well, this is the first part of the project, right? And these were all in a series called The Question of Ancestry. These are images from the performance that I did in Brazil. When I got down there, I had all of the beads ready to go. And I didn't feel like beading medallions down there. I became fixated on strings of beads and how the colors represent particular orishas, particular roads of particular orishas. And the string that you see there is actually like a double dutch that is just beads. It's all glass beads, all check beads that are long enough to literally just double dutch. And this was my way of kind of activating these strings of beads that I did down there. What I found out that the strings of beads actually welcomed conversations and stories, because anyone down there who knows something about candomblé, has a relationship with candomblé, they know something about what the beads are saying. So then I started, that's how the research developed, by finding out particular roads and then leading them, and then oftentimes, giving them away, because if somebody would tell me about a particular road that they were crowned, I would make that beaded necklace and give it to them, you know. And these images was taken by a fellow artist in resident named Scott Hawking from Detroit. Okay, all right. I guess that's the end. We put it on. Oh, we'll leave it there. Okay. It wants to be there. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, LaTasha, thank you for sharing those works with us. That's great. Does anyone have any questions right off the bat for LaTasha? No?
So because I'm not familiar with like your work, part of what you described for you, but obviously you made a lot of reference to being a poet, right? So something that I deal with, I'm a visual artist, but it seems to me there was one line in your video about, like, I thought it was pretty profound. It was about how poems become like Michael's, or, you know, it was like show the interior of a store. And so what I'm trying to say is, like, you're as a poet, you're wrestling with an audience where words have lost their meaning, right? Things have become disposable. Things that used to have value have no more value. You know, I thought the analogy to a store like Michael's was a great analogy, because being from New York like myself, there used to be these really beautiful art stores that you would go to and engage with the community, and you know, and they're like, it was kind of like an exodus to go to these places because they all had meaning and you interact with other artists. And so now they're all gone. You know, they've been taken over by these chains and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say is like that here for someone who's you know, words have such meaning to someone like you in this cross-cultural thing. How do you deal with this time that we're living in, where you know words don't mean a lot to certain people? They'll say one thing, you know, the meaning to them is not as important as it is to you.
I guess I'm still trying to negotiate that. One thing, you know, with the poem becomes Michael's, a poem becomes the dollar store.
Right.
You know, the poem becomes a hoard, right? I'm conflicted by the amount of work that is percolating in my head, that's within my living dwelling, which is in Maitland's living dwelling right now, and the stuff that I share versus the stuff that I don't share, and I think that's one of the challenges of risk and the act of creating a story. Because you could be a wonderful storyteller, but you may not tell the stories that you should be telling. But you'll tell other stories and they'll be fabulous stories. But what are the stories that are most difficult? I think it's one of the questions I'm asking and challenging myself, which is being conveyed through the video. Through the act of muting myself. I think oftentimes people who are familiar with my work are familiar with me as a vocalist, familiar with me as a poet who is always engaged in the oral tradition, as a performance artist who's always doing some type of vocal manipulations, and kind of masking them with some type of images. In that video, I'm choosing for my voice not to be heard throughout the majority of it, you know, because I think there's something about ambient sound that informs me and other artists just as much as hearing ourselves all the time, and that's even by accident. The ambient sounds were weaving into a meta-narrative that I feel kind of conveys another element to that storytelling, to that's personal, if you just pay attention to it. But then again, it's like it's kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, you know, you think of talking about New York, I think about Pearl Paint, right? Pearl Paint was this old art supply shop, 5 floors. Every employee was a character, and they specialized in what made them a character, right? You know, like it's like, you know, the bookstore geek, the record store geek, you know, they know more than you, you know, or they want to know more than you, but like they have their specialty. And
each floor was like a story, like,
Yeah.
really like this
Mhm.
really incredibly unique little
Mhm.
story going on.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think yeah, I think really with Michael's, it's that you don't get that experience, right? Um, and but so then where do you find stories, right? You find them in the space, in the ambient that oftentimes is just either in front of the register or behind the register, that's probably not even speaking to you, doesn't even know, you know, you're right in front of them, like the son that's teaching his father how to work a cash register, you know, so you're seeing the two generations of like how to, keep this business afloat, teach dad, right? And there's a story. So yeah, that's what I'm swimming through.
Yes, go ahead.
I also felt from the video, and now after the images in Brazil, is I felt a sense of searching for, like, you used words that were from different ethnic groups.
Mhm.
Like there was a Moroccan, and then the numbers of each segment were those Cherokee words?
Those are Cherokee words.
So I didn't read on your background as much as I probably should have, so
It's
I'm
okay.
assuming that you have Native American Indian background.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that, and I sensed this, like the chair being your mother, and then the water washing away, like there was this very, to me, a very apparent questioning and searching going on, and there was this very urban images, most of which were, not, I don't want to say disturbing, but there was that inside of that apartment or whatever that was all destroyed, and yet the settings that were in nature were quite beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's as though you were in this one environment,
Mm-hmm.
but this other environment is what was calling you more strongly.
Mm-hmm.
And the sense of the water washing something away,
Mm-hmm.
when it was full of silt. It was not clear water. It was very, very, there was a lot of silt or clay or
Mhm.
there. So I had found those images, even though at first I thought they were very, at first my feeling was that it was a little disconnected. I was trying to find the connection between your text and the images. It all became very apparent as it continued through, and then you'd bring yourself back to that image in the woods and carrying the chair, which in essence is your mother.
Mhm.
So I found it very powerful.
Thank you. You basically said everything. I mean, it's the thing of like what story do you want to tell, but what is the story you want to tell, and what's the story that keeps on reminding you need to tell? And it's, with the water, it's like, what is in the wreck, right? And what can you salvage? What is worth salvaging? The story behind the chair is the footage in nature is actually on my friend's land in the Catskills, and I was very grateful for her to kind of pluck me out of the city during the height of the pandemic, and I was just a ball of nerves, still trying to do my job. I was teaching remotely, that sucked. I had a commission that I had a plan to do in the city and can't, and that sucked. And And I was just surrounded by nature, which was great, but also it was kind of like, how do I calm down, right? And I kept sitting in that chair and helping my friend garden. And she told me maybe 2 weeks later or 3 weeks into it, she was like, you know, Mom, your mom gave me that chair. And I was like, what? I was like, stop. She was like, yeah, you don't remember, like my mom gave her that chair like 20 years ago. I had no recollection of it, but I kept on sitting in the chair, right? So the metaphor of the chair being my mom sitting in her lap, the metaphor of, you know, the word lapa, which is, you know, South African language, meaning, you know, a cloth that you wrap around your waist, a cloth that you cover your lap in, right? And then lapa also meaning home, right? And then lava lava, which is a Samoan word that for the same exact piece of garment. So, you know, you find the threads, and you find the threads, and the threads, right? Which is what I'm working on now. See, the threads eventually get you to what you need to be doing, what you need to be working through. Mm-hmm. So, and yeah, and the apartment that you saw is, I mean, New York is going through a lot of stuff. New York is a mess right now. New York City is a bigger mess. But the building that I live in was purchased by someone who doesn't live in the country in 2018. And I am one of three remaining occupants in the building. And so the other apartments are being gutted out, you know, right next door to me. And that apartment is actually 3 apartments because they're making 3 apartments into one luxury apartment. So you can literally walk through all 3 of the apartments now. And I'm much calmer than I was when it first went down. I will say that, because it's bizarre. It's something that you can't really articulate unless you're in it, right? To articulate silence, which we would normally equate as, you know, nice, beneficial, but a silence of not having neighbors is very, you know, you don't hear a dog, you don't hear your neighbors coming into their apartment, you don't have the occasional like, can you water my plants while I'm out of town? You know, you don't have that engagement, right? Back to, you know, Michael's Pearl, right? You don't have that type of engagement. Instead, you have this silence, right? That's momentarily disrupted by, you know, individuals who are demolishing apartments. And so when my mom first moved into the building, one of those apartments is actually one of the apartments that you see. So I think what I like to do in when thinking about materials that we use, thinking about the emotional materials and the historical materials that become part of this storytelling, and that you know, yeah, that's literally the apartment that I was in when I was a kid.
Hi, LaTasha.
Hey, this is actually one of my students. He's an amazing visual artist. Garifuna, from originally from Honduras, lived in New York, Brooklyn for some time, and is now
30 years.
for 30 years, and now has been living.
Here in Orlando.
You live here in Orlando? Okay, all right. Because I teach at Stetson, which is in DeLand, Florida. So this is one of my remote students. How you doing, man?
Very good. I want to ask you what's your ID? You know, like, are you from Harlem? I know you're born in Harlem, but I'm saying, are you from Harlem? Are you from Brazil? Are you from Africa? Are you from upstate New York? Where's your ID?
Where's my ID?
Yes.
Which would be like where are your bones?
Right.
Where are my bones? My bones are kind of scattered all over the place.
I've been asking you that question for a while. Like
Yeah.
You've been evading me.
Yeah, my bones are a little bit everywhere, you know. According to the birth certificate, I was born in Harlem, you know, but
But that's the government, though.
that's, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what we're, you know, but yeah, like when you, like you're saying, like, where's my ID? Where are your bones? Like,
Right.
you know, who your peoples?
Exactly.
I'm a little scattered all over the place.
Like every one of us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like who are your people? Where are your bones? Where are my bones? My bones are a little everywhere.
That question's probably getting more and more difficult for a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
to answer.
Mm-hmm.
So many people aren't from a place anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I couldn't answer that question.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I know that also, I mean, like, yeah, okay, there's this pretty shot low tide in Brazil, right? But also some poems that I was going to share with y'all that are in conversation with the images are about this conversation that I had with one Brazilian who said, você é algo mais, você é algo diferente, right? We are something different, right? And it stirred me because it was kind of like, it wasn't saying anti this or that, but it's just like culturally we have become something else, right? And then CNN just kind of debacled that by calling the indigenous people of the United States, categorizing them as something else. True story. During the election, like when they were doing the demographics, they literally like labeled everybody else as something else, right? Which is like, oh, this is problematic. This is very problematic. And because also it was like, here I am writing about exactly that phrase, but the phrase coming from someone who is Brazilian, Afro-Brazilian, and then this aggravation with CNN actually literally referring to a people as something else. And it's like, it's not that something else that this man was explaining to me. It's quite, insulting. But I think I agree with you that a lot of people like come from all over the place, and I think what's become very difficult, particularly in New York, because I only can speak from a New Yorker, as a New Yorker, in a New York experience. It's very difficult to meet a fellow New Yorker, right? Someone born and raised of my age in New York. They actually, I think, someone said that we're kind of like a unicorn, but I can't remember the right. They said like we were bunny rabbit, and I was like, what? What do you mean? And they're like, because you never see a rabbit in New York. That's like the situation with native New Yorkers. So I think my experience, when I say where are my bones, yeah, they're kind of scattered, but I also know there's an urban identity that's part of that. That's just as much of that too. Like, yeah, Catskills was cool, but I definitely felt the city girl. Like I was like, oh yeah, I could connect with this, but I need some concrete every now and then, But it's like, yeah, I'm urban, and I'm also these other things.
Thank you for the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Long time coming?
Yeah.
So you've been on quite a few different residencies, this one in Brazil, and you're here now. I'm sure when you start heading out on a residency, you have ideas of what you're going to experience while you're there. What's something that you've experienced here? You're about halfway through your residency now. Is there anything that you've encountered here that is completely surprising or that has engaged you in some way that you weren't expecting?
The lizards.
We hear about the lizards a lot.
I mean, I've grown very fond of them. They don't. I mean, and one has already been in the house, and one has already been in the studio, and I managed, thankfully, to get them out before they died tragically, drying up from what I hear. But it's a different type. I mean, I don't want to sound like hippy dippy here, but I really like saying good morning to them. I really do. I mean, like, I'll open up the door. There's one looking at me. Good morning. They are individuals. They're not human. They're four-legged. They're scaly. But why not give them salutations as well? So yeah, the lizards. Sometimes I just stand in the middle of the lawn and just stare up. I really love my window. I love my window because I see an osprey literally every day flying over. Today with a snake. Hopefully not our snake, but maybe, but it's okay. It's the circle of life. I like standing in the middle there. The other day, I actually took my shoes off because I think it took me a moment, and here's the city girl comes out. It takes me a moment to just take off the flip-flops and just walk barefoot. I mean, and it's like, it's really like it still takes me a moment to like click into that head. You could walk barefoot. There's grass, The lightning is a trip and a half. It's terrifying at the same time gorgeous, because the night is not night. It's the shade of blue that's kind of bright but cobalt creamy, and the lightning comes and it's just lit up, and it's like, whoa, you see lightning in New York, but not like here. And I'm just gathering that up in my head, right? Like how is that going to transform these little things that I started doing? I had a plan, as I was explaining to Danielle, yes, there's a lot of D's, that I was going to initially resume the beading, but then COVID happened, and frame of mind happens, and it's like, what am I doing? How much longer do I have on this earth? you know, all of that comes into the brain, you know, in addition to are my godchildren on my bank account, you know. You know, it was real. It was real. Like, I was calling my, like, 16-year-old godson, like, do you know your social security number? He's like, no. Why? And I was like, I'm like, because I need to put your name on the account. He's like, okay. I'm putting you on as a beneficiary. If anything happens to me, you get the money, okay? He's like, okay, you know. And it's just like this thing where it's like everything is like, okay, what to do. And I thought about time. I thought about how the time it takes for me to kind of get into a groove at a residency. Also, like, the what I personally need, like coffee, and what I don't need, and how far can I walk? So, you know, it was just like, okay, let's walk. It's hot. Let's keep on walking. It's really, really hot, you know? And just wandering by chance, overhearing things, also people watching, because I really like that. And it's not that easy to do down here, because I mean, I guess because most people are in their cars. So it's been restricted to Publix, Lake Lily, and you guys, and watching life grow right before me, and just collecting all of that. I didn't want to share Latrinda's and Wally's story in details because I feel that they shared it with me, and they're not here. And I also feel that there's something that I'm still negotiating in my work, which is also in the video, and that has to do with permission, right? Permission, and then also asking more questions. So even to talk about Shabi, which is North African, which is not where I'm from, as far as I know, but understanding that particular tradition, which is being taught to me through Ezra, who's a North African dance instructor, who is going to be here when I leave, which sucks. You know, she's going to be here for an Orlando belly dance convention. So look it up. She's awesome. She's awesome. But the conversations we have about the dance and how it's mistranslated, because that also falls into my practice, my writing practice or my performance practice, mistranslation, right? Mistranslation, translation, misreading, but using mistranslation as a positive versus negative. If that answered the question. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Probably have time for just one more. Any last questions anyone have?
There was so much striking imagery in that video, and in particular the dollar store. I think a lot of us could bring it up. I had like a very visceral kind of claustrophobic reaction to it. But the other image that really struck me was the horse, the man on the horse. And first watching it, I thought it was about the rider, and then you kind of flipped it and said it's not. It's about the horse, and the horse is presenting you with this name, and that's the gift. Can you talk a little bit more about that image?
Sure. So it falls into the conversation set that I have with Ezra about that particular, that I think that one is from Algeria or Morocco. and she sent me this on her phone because we have conversations. We have tons of conversations about the hair, right? That, particularly in shabby dance, right? The women get into this type of gesture where literally they're doing a figure eight with their heads, right? I could do it now, but they do it really, really fast, right? And they don't get dizzy. And you're like, what? Right? And the misconception is that this is because it's women doing it, it has to do with femininity. That's the misconception, because through our Western lens, we see sensuality, we see sexuality, we see femininity, right? But that gesture that the women are doing is actually mimicking the horse, right? So like when Ezra's doing this, and it was in slow speed, that's actually what the horse does, right? That Ezra, non-traditionally is wearing her hair naturally curly, but the shabby dancers aesthetically, not having anything to do with like, self-hate or anything, aesthetically, they straighten their hair to mimic the mane of the horse, right? So even that the gesture itself, while it can be the celebration of the woman, it is also it's also dual, because they feel that the spirit, and this is I'm saying this in quotations, the spirit, because again, this is not mine. This is more Ezra's expertise. Is dual, so it's a performance that is both male and female, but it's done through the bodies of women. Yeah, and like there's other footage where like there's another part of their dance where they're on the floor, and I was cracking up and I said, oh, that looks how I look when I'm trying to get out of bed in the morning, right? Because you're just like, right? And because it's so unrefined, it's so like, it's not, and it's like, you see it, when you see it done, it's like, there's the horse again. Like, there's the horse again. So it's like, imagine a horse, when you see a horse occasionally just plop themselves on the sand and roll around and then get up. It's not pretty. It's not as graceful as you see them, running, flowing with the mane and the tail, right? It's just kind of clunky, and they mimic that as well. And so that's what it's, yeah. But that particular one is called Hate, pronounced like hate, but not hate. And that you see the men. And again, that's as much as I know, but I love it because it's really about how we accidentally, unintentionally mistranslate things, but then like, how do we work with that mistranslation?
All right, well, LaTasha, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Hope that your next couple of weeks are productive,
Mm-hmm.
and that the lizards visit you frequently. And yeah, the lightning is very different here than
Yeah.
it's its own being here. It's very violent.
It's violent, but it's also beautiful, yeah. And I think my friend Byron, who's Dene, like y'all get like a lot of female rain and then male rain, but it's back and forth, back and forth. It's like really light rain, he says, in Dene culture is female. And then the really heavy downpour, that's a male, And so like y'all get a lot of that. And And I'm learning how to look more at the clouds, at the sky, which is something I do in the city, but it becomes more challenging because you're blocked by, these degrees of skyscraper versus I want to be a skyscraper. I want to be bigger, So a lot of buildings still in the sun, and here that's not the case. So you can actually see the clouds and you can actually see when the rain is coming, right?
Yeah,
Which
there's
is
nothing like
really-
watching the edge of a rainstorm.
Yeah.
Across
Yeah.
You actually see it, yeah.
It's just like, wow, yeah. So
All right.
are folks coming to my studio to see what I'm doing?
We can. We hadn't. We weren't sure if you were up for that or not.
I'm up for it. I'm
Okay.
up for it, yeah. Because I think you'll see what's continuing.
Great.
Because
if you'd
we
like
just
to join
brought up-
LaTasha, we'll go right across the street and into the main garden and see her studio at the box studio. Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.